Greetings to all fans of fractals, shaders and the Godot Engine. Once again, I've prepared one of many algorithms for creating interesting effects that you can add to your game or perhaps use as a live background for a music video. Let's see how it works. Before I get into creating the effect step by step, just a quick note. I finally set up a Patreon account where I'd like to publish various types of premium content. So, if you enjoy my channel and would like to support it a bit, Patreon memberships start at €1 per month. I appreciate every bit of support as it motivates me to keep working on more videos and tutorials. The address of the Patreon account should be on the screen right now, and you can also find it in the description of this video. Thanks for your attention. Alright, let's get into coding. As always, we'll start with a new 2D scene in the scenes folder. So let's do it. Right click, create new scene, and I will call it Plexus, TSCN. I think our effect will resemble something like this in the final stage. Alright, let's do the usual stuff. Right click on the root node, add child node and add color rect. Very well, and I will set its dimensions to 600 by 400 as usual. Here it is. Alright. And we need to set up the shader material right here, new shader material. Click and new shader, which should be canvas item type, which is correct. Plexus GD shader. Let's just change the folder to shaders and create, and click to open it in the shader editor. Very well. Since we only need the fragment function, we can delete the rest of the generated code and start with the usual stuff. So first I will delete the vertex function and the commented out light function, and now we usually translate the coordinate origin to the center of the screen. So I'll do it right here. Vec2 UV is UV minus 0.5. Just to remind, as we know, we are working in UV coordinates, so the top left corner is 0, 0, and the bottom right is 1, 1. So the center would be 0.5 and 0.5, but now if I subtract the 0.5, 0, 0 is shifted directly to the center. And we need to correct the aspect ratio because we're working on the rectangle. So this is this usual formula. We modify the x coordinate by multiplying that by resolution. Of course, sorry, I forgot to define the uniform parameter that specifies the dimensions of this rectangle. So let me do it now. Uniform vector 2 resolution is vector 2, and the default values would be the same as we selected for the color rect node, 600 by 400. Now we can use it right here. Resolution x divided by resolution y. Perfect. Okay. As you might know, as you might know, I usually start with a black background, but right now we will start with the predefined color that would be used for the final effect. So let me do it right here. Uniform vector 3. The color is in RGB space, so it is vector 3. We will not use the alpha channel right now, so we don't need the fourth component of the usual vector. Line color, and if we give the hint source color, we will see this nice color picker in the inspector. And the initial value, let's start with something greenish as we could have seen at the beginning of this video. Red, green, blue. Okay, semicolon. So it should be here in the shader parameters. Yeah, green color. Perfect. And let's set the color to the final color of this fragment function. So vector 3, I'll define a variable called color, which is currently just line color. It will be improved later. And the internal variable color will be assigned a new vector 4, because right now we need to use all components, including the alpha channel. So first 3 components are from our color variable, and the alpha channel we will set to 1. Everything is opaque. So as we can see, everything is green because our code does nothing else. Now we'll need to create a fractal structure. For this, we will use a technique you may remember from previous videos. It's named Fractal Brownian motion. I definitely recommend watching the video where we created the animated lightning effect, because that's where I explained this algorithm in probably the most detail. The link should be in the video description. Let's prepare the foundation of this function. As we know from theory, fractal Brownian motion is based on adding up the interim results of the algorithm and changing parameters after each iteration. For this, we will need these uniform parameters. Uniform int octaves. I will type them first and then explain. Int range, let's try from 1 to 50 with the step 1, and the initial value let's set to 20. And the second one, uniform float zoom factor with a hint range from 1 to to 100, and 0.1 is the nice step to use, and the initial value would be 10. Okay, so the parameter octaves simply represents the number of iterations we will perform in the algorithm. Let's start with 20, which is a decent median value, and later we will see how this number affects the overall appearance of the effect. The second parameter, zoom factor, corresponds to what is called frequency in fractal Brownian motion. I've named it zoom factor here because this meaning will also be relevant in our algorithm, and it is, I would say, more visually descriptive. Now, based on this, we will create the first version of the fractal function. Let's do it here. So the function will return vector 2. I call it fractal, and the input parameter is vector 2 UV coordinates, nothing else. And let's define the variable we will return as the return value and call it FBM for fractal Brownian motion. It starts at the 0 vector. Okay, and now let's work with the zoom. Float zoom is zoom factor, the initial value. I use it like this because we might change the zoom value later on, and it is not possible to change the value of uniform parameters. It must stay as it is. So that's why I reassigned it to a new variable zoom. And now the octaves, the iterations for int I from 0 to the number of octaves and I++. We will do, as I said, we will add up the results of the iterations, and let's try the simple cosine function of the UV coordinates multiplied by the zoom factor. And I think that the result was too bright if I leave it just like that. Let's try it out and return FBM. Return. And of course we must use it in the fragment function to calculate the final color. So we will achieve it like this. Where is it? Here. Okay. So vector2 FBM is the result of the fractal function of the parameter UV. And now we need to multiply the color with this result, but as we know, this is the vector 3 and we have a vector 2 right here. So to make it possible, let's just do this trick and convert FBM to a float value by a simple addition of its components, FBMX plus FBMY. Let's wait for it. Yeah, as I said, it is too bright, so let me just divide this by the zoom factor. That's better. Very well. We have the first version of the effect, but it doesn't quite give off a fractal impression. As I mentioned, the parameters for each iteration needs to change, and we are not doing that. Let's add the first change, which we will call zoom coefficient or zoom coef. Uniform float zoom coef with a hint range, let's say from 1 to 5, and we need this kind of step to make it easier in the inspector to set up. And let's start with 1.1, so the multiplication would actually have some effect. And now all we need to do is this. Zoom is multiplied by the zoom coef. Wait for it. Okay, that's a bit better, but it's still too irregular. To start approaching what I showed at the beginning of the video, we need to add more modifications for each iteration. We'll introduce 2 new vectors and use them for a slightly more complicated recalculation of the current value of the FBM vector. Let's do it. So first of them I will call shift, and again it will start as 0 vector 2, and so would the second one, which I will name warped UV, because we are going to modify the coordinates in some kind of warping function. Okay, and now this is correct, and we need to do these calculations in the iterations. So warped UV would be UV multiplied by zoom. Basically, I will just use this argument of the cosine function and improve it. Now we would like to take the current iteration index into account, and we need to convert it to a float value because we are working with float values everywhere. And let's increase that by the shift vector. All right, and this is the first thing. Now we need to modify the shift as well. It will be increased by sine of this warped UV. This will give us very interesting results, as we will see very soon. This will be replaced by the new vector warped UV, and yeah, that's it. Something has changed, but at the same time everything has darkened. Before we proceed, we should lighten our effect a bit, otherwise soon we won't see anything. Let's add another uniform parameter, which we'll call brightness. Uniform float brightness, okay, with a hint range from 1 to 100, why not? And 0.1, and the initial value would be 10. And of course we need to apply that in the fragment function and multiply the color by that. So it would be brightness multiplied by this. Okay, the effect is more visible now, and there are some hints of the future tangled net, but we still haven't reached the main goal. It's time for the magic trick. This is one of the rules that will definitely come in handy when experimenting with your own algorithms. If you need to incorporate a significant and organically appearing deformation, use a rotation matrix, but not in the same way for all pixels. It's very important for this rotation to be recalculated in each iteration. Let's demonstrate it right away. So first, one more uniform parameter, this time would be hopefully the last one, and it will control the size of the rotation angle. Uniform float rotation angle with a hint range from 0 to, let's say, 4, and again 0.001 as a step with the initial value 0.5. Okay, and now let's add the function for computing the rotation matrix. It is a well-known formula and we've used it many times before. I'll add it here. So this time we will return a matrix, not a vector, so mat2, let's call it rotate, and the parameter is the angle. Okay, so I will define, it consists of sines and cosines, so just to avoid code repetition, I will define it right here, SA as sine of the angle, sine angle, CA as a cosine, and now the matrix return mat2 and vec2. As we know in Godot shading language, we must create a matrix out of vectors, which is different to how you do it in a standard GLSL, where you simply use four float parameters. So vector 2, negative as sine and cosine. So this is the rotation matrix. Great. And finally, let's use this matrix in the fractal function. Here it is. So we need to create it first. mat2 rotation is rotate rotation angle, and here it is. We will multiply UV by this rotation matrix, because it's possible to multiply vectors by matrices. It is a standard operation. Something is going on. But we are not finished. Let's multiply the shift as well. Rotation. Here we go. That looks cool, doesn't it? But something is still missing. Right, our effect is static and doesn't move. Let's add a change in calculation over time. Okay, so what we need is to add the time parameter to the fractal function, float time, and use it in this formula. I think we will just add it to the warped UV calculation. Very well, and now the function signature changed, so the compiler is not happy. We need to fix it here. First, let's define time as the internal time and use it as a parameter. Wait, perfect. Doesn't it look beautiful? This effect is definitely usable. If we wanted to enhance it a bit more, we could apply tricks number 2 and 3, the power and length functions. So let's start with the power function, which is often used to emphasize certain parts of the fractal. We will make this change. Let's find the color definition, and instead of just a sum, we will use the power function, and in its argument to the power of 2. Okay. By the way, the larger number we use here, the thinner the lines will be highlighted. Let's, for example, try 8. what happens? Yeah, almost nothing is visible right now, but I think you got the idea. 4 might be better. Yeah, let's get back to the initial value of 2. Actually, we could make this coefficient another uniform parameter, but it's probably not necessary. Very well, and the second trick, let's add the inverse value of the length of the FBM vector. So I will do it right here, which is 1 divided by the function length of FBM. Wait. Okay, that's definitely too much. Let's try 0.1 instead of 1. 0.1. Maybe 0.01. Very interesting, but I think we can make it even smaller. Yeah, I think this is the best result. Perfect. And if we want, we can further fine-tune the brightness of certain parts of this effect using a constant that we will add to this initial sum. So for example, let's add 0.2 and wait. Okay, I like it. Very well. Last thing, perhaps you'd like the background to be transparent instead of black, so the effect can be used as an additional layer on something that already has a background. For this, we need to replace the fixed value of 1 here in alpha value for the alpha channel with something more dynamic. To fine-tune such functionality, we will add the uniform parameter alpha threshold. So uniform float alpha threshold with a hint range from 0 to 1 and 0.01, and but start at 0, which is basically the current state, as it will have no effect on the alpha channel. And we will replace this last line with this. First, we need the average value of the current pixel based on the RGB components. So float AVG is color R plus color G plus color B, and the arithmetic mean, so divided by 3. And here, instead of 1, we will use this. AVG is less or equal the alpha threshold. If it is, let's use 0, or otherwise 1. Okay, we can see no difference here, but if we move this slider, yeah, this is how we can fine-tune it and use it with a transparent background. Great. And that's it. I hope you liked the effect and find the use for it. It's worth noting that again that we've only showcased one of many combinations of functions and parameters, so don't hesitate to experiment and try changing everything you can. Now, when I think about that, perhaps something like smooth speed changes, which we currently have constant, or color transformations using a color palette could produce very nice results. I'll certainly delve into more experiments, and I'll publish the most interesting results on my Patreon account. So take care and see you in the next video.